I grew up with half a life. Most people don't notice it when they're little, but I did. Other kids had dads. Dads who picked them up from school, dads who embarrassed them in front of their friends, dads who yelled at soccer games, dads whose faces showed up in picture frames around their houses. I didn't have any of that. No photos. No stories. No name, except one whispered once by my mother when I was 8, then immediately taken back as if saying it out loud made it real in a way she couldn't handle. She told me his name was Matt. No last name. No background. No explanation. Don't ask more, she'd say whenever I tried. It won't help anything. I learned early that asking for information was like touching a bruise. My mother would flinch, emotionally if not physically. So I stopped asking. But the questions didn't stop forming. They grew under my skin, quietly, like roots pushing into the soil beneath a house. When doctors asked for family medical history, I had nothing to give. When school projects required a family tree, I handed in lopsided branches with one entire side missing. When people said I didn't look like my mother, their voices carried curiosity, but also a kind of unintentional accusation. Growing up without half your story makes the whole thing feel unstable, like you're always on the verge of sliding sideways. By the time I reached my 20s, I had become good at pretending it didn't bother me. I told jokes about it. I shrugged when people asked. I acted self-sufficient. But the truth was simpler and sadder. I wanted to know who I was, where I came from, who I resembled, why I existed. And then, on my 27th birthday, I bought myself a 23andMe kit. I didn't tell my mother. I didn't tell anyone. I told myself it was harmless, that maybe I'd find out whether I was predisposed to hating cilantro, or if I had Viking roots or whatever people joked about online. But deep down I knew why I bought it. I wanted a name, or a face, or even a clue. I mailed in the kit and tried not to obsess. But every time an email notification popped up on my phone over the next few weeks, my heart jumped into my throat. When the results finally arrived, I opened the app with shaking hands. I expected something anticlimactic, a list of ethnic percentages, maybe a distant cousin or two. Instead, at the top of the page, in bold letters, it said, "Half-sister identified, extremely high confidence." Her name was June Delaney. For a long moment, I thought I was reading it wrong, or that 23andMe had made some catastrophic mistake. That maybe I was hallucinating. I blinked repeatedly, but the words didn't change. Half-sister. A real, living person. Someone with my blood. Someone who existed in the world with answers I didn't have. I burst into tears so suddenly it startled me. Not polite tears. The ugly, uncontrollable kind that come from somewhere deep. I sat on the floor of my apartment, staring at her name. Delaney. I repeated it aloud. It felt foreign and familiar at the same time. I clicked on her profile. She lived not far from me. Her age lined up perfectly with the timeline my mother refused to talk about. Her photos, just tiny thumbnails, showed dark hair like mine. I felt something I'd never felt before, the possibility of not being alone. But fear came right after. What if she wanted nothing to do with me? What if she denied it? What if her family hated me? What if reaching out opened a door that slammed shut in my face? I stared at the message button for hours. I typed a message. Deleted it. Typed a shorter one. Deleted it. Wrote one that sounded too desperate. Deleted that too. I must have written 20 drafts. Finally, I wrote something simple. "Hi, I know this might be a surprise, and I don't want to intrude. But 23andMe says we might be related. I've grown up not knowing anything about my father. If you'd ever be open to talking, I would be grateful. I'm not looking for anything, just answers." I hovered over the send button so long that my thumb went numb. When I finally tapped it, I started shaking. I put my phone face down and paced my apartment until I was dizzy. I didn't expect a response. I told myself not to expect one. But she replied. Not just politely. Kindly. Warmly. She said her sister Claire might want to talk too. She said they were open to meeting, maybe at a cafe somewhere central. She said there was a lot to process, but they weren't shutting the door. I cried again, quietly this time, with disbelief rather than grief. I had imagined this moment my whole life, the moment I'd find someone who shared my blood, but I never dared imagine they'd be kind. For days leading up to the meeting, I could barely eat. My stomach was too tight, my mind too loud. I kept imagining what they looked like beyond the tiny thumbnails. Whether they'd look at me and see themselves or see a mistake. Whether they'd resent me for existing at all. The morning of the meeting, I stood in front of my closet for half an hour, trying to pick an outfit that didn't feel like a costume. I settled on a soft sweater and jeans because pretending to be someone else felt like a bad way to start something real. I got there early. Way too early. I sat in a corner booth staring at the door, my hands clasped so tightly around my coffee cup that my knuckles hurt. When they finally walked in, June first, then Claire right behind her, my breath caught in my throat. They didn't see me yet. I watched them step inside, look around, and start searching the room. My heart hammered so loud I could barely hear anything else. I knew, even before they saw me, that my life was about to split into before and after. And when they turned toward me and our eyes met for the first time, something inside me shifted, something I still don't have the right words for. When they finally spotted me at the corner table, June smiled first, nervously, like she wasn't sure whether to wave or approach or run away. Claire followed a half step behind her, more reserved, but her eyes held something soft beneath the caution. They walked toward me with this mixture of curiosity and hesitation that I instantly recognized. I felt it too. I stood up so fast I bumped the table, sloshing some coffee onto the saucer. Smooth. Great first impression. June laughed gently, and the tension in my chest loosened just a little. Hi, I said, and I hated how shaky my voice sounded. Hi, June replied, and then she hugged me. I froze for a moment. I don't think I'd been hugged by someone new in years, at least not in a way that felt like it mattered. She pulled back and smiled again, and I felt something warm bloom in my chest. Then Claire stepped forward. Her hug was quicker, less instinctive, but real. Her arms wrapped around me with a kind of cautious sincerity that made my throat tighten. She smelled faintly like citrus shampoo, and for some inexplicable reason I almost cried at that. We sat. The three of us stared at each other for a moment, like we were all afraid the spell might break if we moved too suddenly. Then June started talking, about how strange and surreal this must feel for everyone, about how she had spent the previous night pacing her apartment imagining what I might be like. I laughed and admitted I'd done the exact same thing. Claire listened more than she spoke. But when she did say something, it mattered. Her questions were thoughtful, precise. Not nosy. Not judgmental. Just trying to understand. I told them about growing up with no father figure, about the empty half of my family tree, about the ache that had followed me since childhood. I tried to keep it light, but emotion kept slipping out at the edges. June reached across the table at one point and squeezed my hand. Claire watched me with this expression I couldn't quite decipher, sympathy maybe, or recognition. They told me their father's name. I already knew it from online searches, but hearing them say it made it feel different. Solid. True. Mark? I said quietly, trying the word in my mouth. It felt heavy and delicate at the same time. We have photos, June said a little shyly, like she wasn't sure if offering them was too much too soon. Claire hesitated before adding, Our grandmother has more than any of us. If you ever wanted to see them. I stared at them both. I didn't know what to say. It felt like they were offering me something sacred, something I had spent my life believing I'd never have access to. I would really like that, I whispered. We talked for hours. About small things and big things. About where I grew up, what I did for work, what their family was like. They told me stories about their dad. Stories I clung to like someone starving. The way he made pancakes shaped like animals, the way he danced with their mom in the kitchen, the way he stubbornly refused to read instructions for anything ever. I laughed. I cried a little. I apologized for crying. They told me it was okay. Then June asked if I wanted to come to their grandmother's house the following weekend. She said I didn't have to, that there was no pressure, but the offer hung in the air like a lifeline. I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. The following Saturday, I drove to their grandmother's house with my heart pounding so hard it made my fingertips tingle. The house itself was cozy, lived in, the kind of place that smelled like lemon furniture polish and memories. Their grandmother, Margaret, opened the door. She eyed me in a way that felt like she was taking a measurement inside her mind, assessing, comparing, wondering. But then she opened her arms, and I hugged her because I didn't know what else to do. She patted my back once, briskly, like she wasn't used to hugging strangers but was willing to make an exception. Inside, the living room was full of framed pictures. I didn't want to stare too obviously, but my eyes kept drifting toward one particular portrait, Mark, much younger than I ever imagined him, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. I stepped closer without meaning to. The room faded slightly around me. All I could see was him. His eyes. His jawline. Features I'd never seen before in real life but recognized instantly because some version of them lived in my own face. "He looks kind," I murmured. Claire nodded. June swallowed hard. Their grandmother brought out albums, thick ones covered in plastic sleeves with handwritten captions. They sat beside me and turned page after page. I saw Mark holding a kite at the beach, Mark wearing a ridiculous sweater at Christmas, Mark with a teenage haircut that made everyone burst out laughing. Every new photo hit me like a wave. This was him. This was the man whose absence had shaped my entire life. At some point, their grandmother disappeared down the hall and returned holding something wrapped in tissue paper. She unwrapped it slowly and handed it to me. It was a pillow. Just a simple white pillow with Mark's face printed on the front. A memorial pillow they'd had made after he died. The moment I saw it, something inside me shattered. I pressed the pillow to my chest and the tears came fast, unstoppable. Embarrassing and raw and utterly overwhelming. "I'm sorry," I choked. I'm sorry. But June moved closer and put her arm around me. Claire looked away for a moment, blinking quickly, like she couldn't handle watching someone else break open over the same man she'd lost. Their grandmother said softly, "Cry if you need to, dear. You're allowed." No one had ever said that to me in my entire life. By the time dinner was over, I was exhausted. They insisted I stay the night because it was late and they didn't want me driving tired. I accepted, grateful and embarrassed all at once. In the guest room, with the pillows still beside me, I cried again. Not silently this time. The kind of crying you do when the grief you didn't know you were carrying finally finds a place to pour out. I cried for the father I never met. For the years I spent wondering. For the questions that were finally, painfully being answered. For the feeling of belonging that felt so close I could almost hold it. I don't know how long I cried before I fell asleep. Only that I hadn't cried like that since I was a child. The next morning, everything felt different. A little brighter. A little heavier. I felt stitched into something. Loosely, tenderly, tentatively. June hugged me again, and Claire gave a small, warm smile that made me feel less like an intruder. We ate breakfast. We looked at more photos. We laughed at stories about Mark's terrible grilling skills. I asked questions, simple ones, gentle ones. What music he liked. What foods he hated. Whether he snored. Whether he was quiet in the mornings or talkative. Nothing about legal issues. Nothing about the hospital. Nothing about the settlement I didn't know existed yet. Just a daughter trying to understand a father she never had. By the time I left that afternoon, I felt something I'd never felt before in my life. Connected. Like I had stepped into a story I was always meant to be part of, even if I entered it far too late. I drove home with the pillow in my lap and the knowledge that for the first time, there were people in the world who could answer the questions that had lived inside me for decades. Over the next few months, I slipped into their world slowly, like someone stepping into water 1 inch at a time, terrified the temperature might change without warning. We didn't spend every day together, not even close, but the moments we did share felt strange and delicate, like touching something precious with hands that weren't sure they deserved to hold it. June texted often, checking in about my week, sending little snapshots of things that reminded her of our last conversation. She was warm, open, eager. Claire was quieter, but when she did reach out, her messages always felt thoughtful in a way that made me read them twice. Their mother, Evelyn, wasn't around much the first couple months, and I understood that. Meeting me must have been like reopening a wound she'd worked very hard to stitch shut. I didn't push. I was careful. Too careful, maybe. Every time I laughed with them, I wondered if I was stepping somewhere I didn't belong. Every time June hugged me, I worried I was being selfish for wanting to hold on a second longer. Every time Claire talked about their father, I felt a little guilty for stealing pieces of him through their stories when I'd never earned them. Still, those moments meant everything to me. Seeing pictures of him as a young man, hearing about how he used to leave notes in Evelyn's lunch, how he'd spend whole Saturdays cooking breakfast foods, how he'd insisted on reading bedtime stories in ridiculous voices, it made him real. Not an empty silhouette. Not a one-syllable ghost from my childhood. A real man. A real father. One I would never meet. I try not to think about that last part too much. Whenever I lingered on it, I felt something hot and aching rise in my throat. I asked questions that felt safe. About his favorite foods. His music taste. His job. How he laughed. Whether he was stubborn. Whether he was the kind of dad who showed up for school events or the kind who forgot them. They answered everything. They never made me feel like I was trespassing. And yet, I started feeling strange. Not because of anything they did, but because of something shifting inside me. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. And that terrified me. I kept waiting for them to pull away. For them to say, this was a mistake. For them to decide I wasn't someone they wanted to know. I apologized constantly during those months, always afraid I'd said something wrong. But the real shift didn't start with them. It started with my mother. I finally told her. Not everything, not at first. I just said, I met someone. Someone from my father's side. She froze. Then she sat down slowly, as if her legs had given out. Why would you do that? She whispered. Because I needed to know, I said. Because I deserved to know. She pressed her hands to her face. He wasn't supposed to be part of your life. He never was, I said sharply. That's the problem. Her reaction wasn't anger. Not really. It was fear. Shame. The kind that sits in the stomach for decades and never fully dissolves. Finally, she said something that shook me in a way I still haven't fully processed. I'm not proud of that time in my life. I don't know if he even knew about you. And I don't know if he would have wanted to. I felt something in my chest snap cleanly in half. I left before she could take it back. That night, after pacing my apartment for hours, I Googled him. I didn't intend to find anything specific. I just wanted to see if there was a mention of him somewhere, anywhere. There was. I found news pieces, legal summaries, even a few archived public documents. They all pointed to the same story, his sudden death 5 years before, and the malpractice case the Delaney family had pursued. I read every detail, every article, every description of the hospital's failure, every line about the family's heartbreak. The words blurred, but I couldn't stop. I felt sick. This man I had just begun to mourn, had died in a way that broke the people who loved him. And I hadn't been part of that grief. I hadn't even known him. I hadn't known anything. I kept scrolling, and that's when I found the part that changed everything. The settlement. A multi-million-dollar malpractice settlement awarded 3 years before. Public record. Not flaunted by the family, not talked about by them, just there. I stared at the number for so long I forgot to breathe. It wasn't the money itself that rattled me. It was what it represented. It was acknowledgement. Recognition. Compensation for a loss tied to a father they got to know, and I never did. A formal statement that his life mattered. I hadn't been part of that. I hadn't even been considered. No one knew I existed. No one had been able to say, he had another child who lost something too. My emotions spiraled. Confusion, grief, anger, jealousy, guilt, shame, all tangled together. I didn't know how to handle any of it, so I started to pull back. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but instinctively. Every time June texted something sweet, my chest tightened. Every time Claire sent a photo of their dad, I felt both gratitude and this raw, painful ache. I started asking questions I didn't mean to sound pointed. When did he die? How did everything unfold? What happened after? How soon did that process start? Nothing about the lawsuit yet. Nothing about the money. Nothing probing. But I was trying to piece together not just a person, but a loss. I don't know if they noticed. Maybe they did. Maybe they just chalked it up to curiosity. My friends, though, they noticed something in me. One night over dinner, I admitted what I had learned. He died because of medical negligence, I said softly. And they got a settlement. My friend Megan blinked. Did they include you? No, I said, my stomach twisting. They didn't know I existed. That still doesn't seem fair, she said. The word hung in the air, poisonous and irresistible at the same time. Fair. I'm not thinking about it like that, I insisted, even though a part of me was. Another friend chimed in. If your biological father's death was mishandled, isn't that something that affected you too? Emotionally? Medically? Even genetically? I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to laugh it off. I wanted to say, it doesn't work like that. But instead I sat there, silent, feeling a knot of longing and resentment twist deeper inside me. I started distancing myself from Claire and June more and more. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much, and I didn't know how to coexist with the knowledge that their grief, valid, deep, rightful, had been lived without even the possibility of mine. I felt like I had shown up too late to a story already written. And worse, I felt like the missing chapters had been stolen from me. One night, after hours of pacing and crying and asking questions into the dark that no one could answer, I Googled something I didn't expect to find. Children's rights in wrongful death cases. Late discovered heirs. DNA confirmed adult children. Inheritance disputes connected to malpractice settlements. I didn't understand most of what I read. Some articles contradicted each other. Some were outdated. Some were written by lawyers who seemed to think human life was a spreadsheet. But one thing kept appearing again and again. A biological child might have a claim. Not guaranteed. Not simple. But possible. I didn't decide anything that night. I didn't even consider filing a lawsuit. Not consciously. But that was when the seed was planted. I wish I could say it never should have. I wish I could say I ignored it. I didn't. I didn't go looking for a lawyer. Not really. At least, that's what I told myself. I told myself I just wanted information. I told myself it was responsible to understand the legal landscape. I told myself I owed it to my father, this man I was only just beginning to grieve, to know whether there was some acknowledgement of me that should have existed but didn't. But even as I made the appointment, I felt sick. My hands shook as I sat in the waiting room. I almost left twice. The attorney's office felt too official, too sharp around the edges for the fragile confusion swirling inside me. When the receptionist called my name, I forced myself to follow her, telling myself I could always walk out. The lawyer was older, calm, collected in that way lawyers often are. He didn't seem surprised by anything I told him. Not the 23andMe match, not the late discovery of siblings, not the situation with my mother, not the malpractice settlement. He'd seen this before. That somehow made it worse. When I finished my tangled explanation, he leaned back and steepled his fingers. First, he said, I'm sorry for your loss. Even if you didn't know him, losing a biological parent is still a loss. The words hit me with unexpected force. No one had said that to me before. No one had ever acknowledged that not knowing my father didn't mean I hadn't lost him. I swallowed hard and nodded. He continued, You may have a claim, but timing is the issue. Your father died 5 years ago. The settlement was issued 3 years ago. Late claims can be very difficult. The disappointment hit me quicker than I expected. So what does that mean? I asked. It means you could attempt to file, he said, but it will be an uphill battle. The stronger argument will be recognition of your status as a biological child and the emotional harm associated with losing a parent without the benefit of knowing him. Harm. Emotional harm. A phrase I didn't expect to feel like both a wound and a justification. He went on. Courts are seeing more of these cases now. DNA revealing children who weren't known at the time of death. Some claims are successful. Some are not. Each situation is unique. I tried to think logically. I tried to be fair. I tried to imagine how Claire and June would feel. But something else, something deeper, was speaking louder than logic. For the first time in my life, someone was saying that what happened to me mattered. That the absence I'd lived with wasn't just empty space. It was injury. I asked, would this hurt them? The lawyer paused for half a beat. Legal processes are stressful, he admitted. It won't be easy for any party involved. My stomach twisted. I pictured Claire's steady eyes, June's open smile, their grandmother's gentle hand on my shoulder. Then I pictured my father, gone before I ever had a chance. I pictured the years of longing, the photos I never saw, the stories I never heard, the genetic history I had to guess at, the birthday candles I blew out wishing for answers that never came. I pictured all of it stacked together, and I felt an ache so big it crowded out everything else. I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. Do I deserve anything? He didn't hesitate. You deserve acknowledgement. That word cracked something open inside me. Acknowledge me. Acknowledge that I'm his daughter. Acknowledge that I existed in the margins of his story. Acknowledge that my loss counts, even if I never got to meet him. He handed me a packet of forms, timelines, potential arguments. My eyes blurred as I looked through them. It all seemed so procedural, so clinical, compared to the storm inside me. He said, if you choose to pursue this, your best chance is to file sooner rather than later. I nodded. I don't know if I understood what I was agreeing to emotionally, morally, or practically. I only knew that a door that had been sealed shut my entire life suddenly stood ajar, and I didn't trust myself not to reach for it. Before I left, he said something else. You should not speak directly with the Delaney family about this if you decide to proceed. Everything must go through counsel. That sentence detonated something inside me. Don't speak to them. Don't explain. Don't apologize. Don't give them context. Don't let them soften or change your mind. I should have refused. I should have said, no, I won't blindside them. I should have walked out of that office and driven straight to Claire's apartment and told her everything. But I didn't. I nodded again. And that nod, small, almost invisible, set everything in motion. The days after filing were a fog of adrenaline and guilt. I woke up each morning with my heart pounding. I felt nauseous constantly. I checked my phone obsessively, knowing they wouldn't message me but hoping for, I don't know, something to hold on to. The silence between us became monstrous. Every hour it grew thicker, more suffocating. When the Delaneys were served the papers, I wasn't there. But I imagined it in vivid detail. I imagined Claire's face falling, June's confusion turning to hurt, Evelyn's grief cracking open again. I didn't want that. I swear I didn't want that. But wanting something and causing something are not the same. I waited for anger. I waited for messages telling me I'd ruined everything. I waited for someone to demand an explanation. Nothing came. Not a word. And somehow, their silence felt louder than any accusation. I watched them from a distance, online, quietly enough that it felt like trespassing. I noticed Claire posted less. June posted things about exhaustion and heartbreak without saying why. Their mother disappeared from everything. Every time I saw one of those glimpses, shame pooled in my stomach like something toxic. But I didn't reach out. The lawyer's voice echoed in my mind. Don't contact them. You'll jeopardize the case. Let the process unfold. Let the process unfold. As if the process wasn't tearing through the very people I had hoped might one day become my family. I kept telling myself I wasn't doing anything wrong. I told myself I was fighting for recognition. I told myself I was standing up for the forgotten daughter. I told myself loss deserves acknowledgement. But every night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, sick with the knowledge that the people I cared about were hurting because of me. The lawsuit dragged on. Depositions. Documents. Cold phrases like putative heir and emotional damages. I saw my own name printed on paperwork in ways that made me feel like a stranger to myself. I wanted to stop. I wanted to undo it. But I didn't know how to step back without looking like I had never believed in my own claim to begin with. And I did believe in it. Some part of me believed fiercely that my loss was real. But another part, the part that remembered June's hug and Claire's cautious smile and their grandmother's soothing voice, knew I was destroying the very people who had shown me kindness. The deeper the case went, the more tangled my guilt became. I wasn't just hurting them. I was hurting myself. I was tearing apart the possibility of belonging I had prayed for my entire life. And still, I stayed silent. Not because I didn't care, but because I cared too much and had no idea how to fix what I'd already shattered. The worst part was this. I didn't know anymore whether I was fighting for justice or begging the universe to acknowledge that I had been invisible for too long. As the months dragged on, the lawsuit twisted into something far bigger, colder, and more merciless than anything I had imagined. When I first filed, my emotions were messy and tangled, but at least they were mine. Once the legal system took over, everything became mechanical, sterile, clinical, a machine grinding up everyone involved. My lawyer handled most of it, but I wasn't insulated. I saw the documents. I saw the filings. I saw the way the language reduced everything human into categories and claims. It made me feel like I was watching my own existence be dissected under a fluorescent light. Whenever Claire or June or their mother were mentioned in the paperwork, my stomach lurched. I tried to imagine how they felt reading my name on forms accusing them, of all people, of withholding something I had convinced myself I deserved. The thought that they were being forced to relive their father's death because of me made my chest ache in a way that kept me awake at night. My mother didn't help. She oscillated between icy silence and brittle anger. "You shouldn't have gone to them," she said once. "You shouldn't have dug this up." Another time she snapped, "I told you he wasn't someone who could give you what you needed. Why didn't you listen?" But then, on a different night, when she thought I was asleep, I heard her crying quietly in the kitchen. I wasn't the only one unraveling. There were days when I tried to convince myself that everything would work out, that Claire and June would see my side someday, that maybe the case could settle without too much damage. But the truth was always waiting beneath whatever delusion I tried to build. I had hurt them. Deeply. Irreparably. And it didn't matter that I hadn't meant to. Some nights, I would open social media, scrolling through their profiles like someone watching a life they weren't invited to share. I saw less and less from them. Claire stopped posting almost entirely. June's updates grew vague and sad. Their mother vanished from everything. Each silence felt like another door locking shut in front of me. I didn't reach out. I wanted to. I wanted to write them a long, stumbling explanation full of apologies I wasn't sure I had the right to offer. I wanted to tell them I wasn't trying to take their father from them. I wanted to say I had simply wanted to be acknowledged as part of the tragedy that shaped their lives. But every time I typed out a message, the lawyer's warning echoed in my mind. Do not contact them. It will complicate things. It will make everything worse. And underneath that, something more frightening. What if they didn't want to hear from me? What if they hated me? What if reaching out only deepened the wound? So I stayed silent. The lawsuit took nearly a full year. Each month that passed made the connection between us feel further away, buried under stacks of filings and statements. My lawyer updated me regularly, but even when the updates were neutral, I felt physically ill. Eventually, he started preparing me for the outcome. "It's likely the claim will be dismissed," he said. "The timing works strongly against you. The court tends to favor the original family structure unless there's a compelling reason to alter it." I nodded, pretending the words didn't crush something inside me. I had known, somewhere beneath all the fear and hope and denial, that this was coming. Still, hearing it aloud pierced me. Then one day it happened. My lawyer called me into his office, and the moment I saw his face, I knew. "It's over," he said gently. "The court ruled the claim was filed too late. The Delaney family retains the full settlement." I sat there for a long time without speaking. I wasn't surprised, but I was gutted. I felt like I'd been punched and couldn't catch my breath. Not because I had lost money. I never touched the idea of the money in a tangible way. That wasn't the part that hurt. What hurt was knowing that the case had permanently destroyed whatever fragile hope I'd had of belonging to the Delaney family. Whatever soft, tentative connection we'd built, those shared photos, that weekend at their grandmother's house, the quiet laughter at brunch, felt like it disintegrated in my hands. I walked out of the lawyer's office feeling like a ghost. When I got home, I sat in my car with the door open, unable to move. My mother came out to meet me, but the moment she saw my face, she stopped. "It's done," I whispered. She didn't tell me she was sorry. She didn't hug me. She just looked at me with this tight, pained expression, like she didn't know how to comfort me without betraying her own guilt and resentment. The rest of that day passed in a blur. I went to bed early and lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every step that had led me to this point. I watched the months in reverse. The first meeting, the photos, the tears, the questions, the fragile closeness. I had wanted a family, and instead I had torn one apart. Grief hit me with a force I wasn't prepared for. Not just grief for Mark, my father. Not just grief for what I never had, but grief for what I had almost had and lost entirely because of my own actions. For weeks afterward, I went numb. I stopped checking my phone. I stopped answering friends. I avoided going anywhere I might see the Delaney's. I deleted half my social media posts. I kept the pillow photo on my phone, even though it hurt to look at it. Whenever I thought about them, about Claire's steady concern, June's warmth, Margaret's gentle touch, I felt sick with guilt. They had opened their lives to me. They had offered kindness I'd never known before. And I had repaid them with legal action. I didn't know how to forgive myself for that. The truth is, losing the case wasn't the real loss. The real loss was knowing I would never be part of their world again. Not in the way I had once hoped. The settlement had been secured for them. But the cost had been severing whatever connection we had built. In the silence that followed, something inside me broke quietly, in a way that wasn't dramatic but felt permanent. I stayed that way for months, adrift, ashamed, grieving a family that was never really mine. And then, slowly, something inside me began to insist that I couldn't live with the silence forever. That I owed them something. Not justification, not excuses, but at least an attempt to explain the chaos that had been living inside me. But I wasn't ready yet. Not until half a year had passed. Only then did the words finally start forming. Clumsy, fragile, uncertain. Only then did I gather the courage to reach out, knowing full well I might be met with nothing but silence in return. 6 months passed after the case ended before I could even think clearly again. Not because I was busy or distracted or trying to move forward, but because shame has a way of fogging the mind so completely that every thought becomes heavy. Life didn't go back to normal. It simply went on without me. I woke up, worked, went home, slept badly. I avoided questions from coworkers. I avoided conversations with my mother. I avoided myself most of all. The guilt sat like a stone inside my chest, unmoving, unchanging. Some nights I lay awake remembering the way Claire looked at me the first time we met, the cautious warmth, the guarded curiosity. I remembered June's laughter at brunch. I remembered the pillow in my arms, the tears I tried and failed to hide. Those memories burned and comforted in equal measure. Other nights, I remembered the lawsuit documents, stark and merciless. My name printed beside theirs. The sterile phrasing that turned our grief into categories and claims. My own words quoted back at me, stripped of context and compassion. I wondered constantly whether they hated me. I wondered if they ever thought about me at all. I wondered if they regretted ever letting me into their lives. Some days I believed they should hate me. Other days I wished they didn't. The loss of the case wasn't what broke me. That part had almost felt inevitable. What broke me was the realization that even if we had built something real, something fragile and tentative and hopeful, I had destroyed it before it had a chance to take root. I tried to distract myself. I deleted apps. I removed notifications. I told myself not to look them up online, but I did anyway. Not often. Just enough to know they were alive, still moving forward somehow, even if they carried wounds I had helped create. I saw fewer photos than before. Less brightness in the ones that did appear. I saw nothing overt about the lawsuit, but pain rarely announces itself directly. It hides in the spaces between what people choose to show. I stopped posting too. Anything I wrote felt dishonest or hollow. The only place I let any of it slip through was in vague captions no one understood. Some truths destroy you. Others fix you. Still figuring out which one this is. 6 months went by like that. Not healing, not deteriorating. Just quiet limbo. Every time I considered reaching out, I froze. What could I possibly say? I'm sorry felt inadequate. I didn't mean to sound like an insult. Please understand felt selfish. And beneath the fear was something even harder to admit. I wasn't sure I deserved forgiveness. Not from them. Not from myself. But the silence became unbearable. One night, after staring at my phone for a long time, I finally wrote something. I didn't draft it 20 times the way I had with the first message. I didn't overthink it. I just wrote the only honest words I had left. Hi, Claire. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm hoping you'll read this. I think there were misunderstandings. I would like a chance to talk when you're ready. I stared at the screen so long my eyes stung. My thumb hovered over the send button, trembling. I almost deleted the whole thing. I almost told myself to let it go, to let them heal without me dredging anything up again. But I couldn't. Not because I expected forgiveness. Not because I believed I deserved a place in their lives. Not because I wanted anything from them. But because the silence had become a kind of wound of its own, one I needed to face even if it meant hearing nothing back. So I pressed send. The message went through. The little delivered confirmation appeared. And then there was nothing else. No reply. No dots appearing. Just silence. But the moment after sending it, something shifted in me. Not relief exactly, but a loosening. Like I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for an entire year. I don't know if Claire will ever respond. I don't know if June would want to talk. I don't know if their mother ever wants to hear my name again. They have every right to ignore me. They have every right to protect themselves. They have every right to close the door I shattered. But I needed them to know I wasn't the person the lawsuit made me look like. I wasn't calculating their grief. I wasn't pretending when I held that pillow or cried at their grandmother's table. I wasn't lying when I said I didn't want money. I wanted recognition. I wanted belonging. I wanted something I'd been missing since birth. And in trying to claim it, I ruined the only connection I ever found. If Claire never replies, I'll understand. If June never forgives me, I'll understand. If Evelyn can never bear to hear from me, I'll understand. But I had to try, if only once, to let them know that beneath the legal mess, beneath the bad decisions, beneath the confusion and the fear, there was someone who loved a father she never met and loved the idea of a family she didn't know how to keep. If they never answer, that will be the last line of the story. If they do, then maybe there's something left to salvage, even if it's just the truth. Either way, I'm done hiding. That's all I wanted to say.